The FIT TV definition of parentectomy is the process of removing parents, primarily through divorce actions. Being a parent is your birthright, your goal, your stated purpose in life, and then suddenly you lose everything because there's a family court divorce. The baton can no longer be passed to your children where you are not taught and you cannot prepare for the brute force war games ahead in family court somewhere close to hell. There is no baseline of sharing of custody, so draw swords and let the battle begin. I have with me to discuss the collateral damage that occurs in family court. My guest is Gary Jacobs, a family law reformer as well. Just quickly, Gary, give us about two-minute highlight film of what happened to you.
I filed for divorce about 7 or 8 years ago, not getting along with my wife as many people do, and there was too much conflict, and decided that I would get divorced. I was under the impression that we would share custody because that was in the best interest of the child, and I always heard that that's what the court systems are concerned with. I come to find out that it's not about that. It's about money. It's about punishing the other party. And at the end of the day, to make a long story short, I was ruined financially, but more importantly, I believe my children's lives were destroyed, not only by my ex-wife, because she couldn't have done it without the help of the judicial system, who allowed her to do it and ended up, by de facto, empowering her to destroy my children's lives. Now I'm at the stage where I haven't seen my children in almost a year.
Their age?
Their age? But the oldest is 24, and then I have a 17-year-old and a 16-year-old. And now I'm learning trying to learn how to adjust to life without my children.
Now, what's stopping you from going to the door, knocking on the door and saying, "Can I see my kids?"
It's funny you ask that, because a lot of people, when they'll come up to me and they may not know, and they'll say, "Gary, how are your children?" And of course my heart sinks when they ask me. It's just a sinking feeling. How do you explain to somebody who knows from before that you are such a loving father and your life revolved around your children? How do you explain to them that my children no longer see me?
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't explain it, and I just say they're fine. Sometimes I do. But back to your question, if I do tell them, well, my ex-wife turned them against me, there's a thing called parental alienation. It's similar to a cult leader. And the first thing they ask is, well, why don't you just go to court?
Yeah.
You have a divorce order, you have shared custody, why don't you go to court? And I tell them I did go to court, and I begged the court. The chief judge of matrimonial, Judge Marion McNulty in Suffolk County, I pleaded with her to please just enforce my agreement. I'm not asking for custody, I'm not asking for money, I'm begging you, please enforce my agreement so I can see my children that I love.
Ultimately, she had more power than just dragging money out of you and restricting you from seeing your kids. She had lots of power, right?
Absolutely. The money. I mean, let's be frank. We all care about money. We need money to survive, especially here on Long Island. But the money is not only secondary; it's so far down the road. I would give anything to be able to be with my children again. In fact, I have. I mean, I've mortgaged my house. I've second mortgaged my house. I have no more savings left. My kids' college funds have basically been depleted, trying to fight to see my children, and not even to fight to get custody, just to fight to be able to see my children. And
did you ever get the feeling that maybe you might be in a parallel universe somewhere?
I do. I look at it sometimes, and I can't believe it. And I say, how can in America? How can this happen in the United States of America, that a judge would allow something like this to happen when all you see is people? We realize how important it is for children to have both parents in their lives. Why would I have to even go to court more than once to convince a judge to enforce an agreement that we made? To me, it would be a no-brainer. The judge would say, of course, if you don't honor the agreement, you may lose custody, maybe you'll pay a fine. And they have the authority to do it, Chris.
They do have the authority. They don't have too much precedent. They also have this power base where they don't want to interfere too much. And I don't really know all of the reasons. I'm sure you probably know half of the reasons yourself. What I noticed about it is other states do have that. They do have this access issue where if you're denying the access, then you pay a penalty. The custodial parent pays some kind of penalty.
It has to, whether it's financial or...
They don't have that here in New York.
They really, like I said, they actually empower the person who's holding back the other child. because the courts don't want to get involved. And one of the things we discussed, why the show was so important, was how do you deal with not seeing your children? The only people who I think can somewhat relate to us is somebody who lost a child, passed away. And I'm not by any means taking anything away from those people. It's, it's heart-wrenching. Your life has changed forever. But those are the only people that can sort of understand what parents like myself who have lost contact with their children, they've been alienated, what they go through. It's such a deep loss.
I wonder how long that the system is going to keep providing no help and the disassociation and with the children and the parents, and also the dysfunction, and this is what the program's about, is the collateral damage.
Right.
How do we know that your 16 and 17-year-old don't need more parenting, and they don't need more of you in your life? How do they know that?
Right.
How did they come to this awareness suddenly?
Right.
What evidence did they have that said they could do that and it would be fine?
Right. I mean, in my case, there was actually the opposite, where the court appointed a specialist who said that, I'm paraphrasing, but basically that if they did have to choose, I was the more fit parent, if for no other reason but that I would foster the relationship with their mother, and that was the most important thing to the evaluator, that I would foster that. And my ex-wife had shown through the evaluation and through the 3 years prior
She was not the best.
that she was not going to do it. Yet the court took the path of least resistance.
That's exactly what
and
that
said,
is.
you know what, the kids are with their mother. They're fine. I don't know what they mean by fine, because who knows what their psyche is, being raised without a father. We all know that that's not good for a child.
Let's talk about the role modeling with the kids and everything like that. There seems to be a loss. If either parent would be gone, there would be a role modeling
Absolutely.
issue. I'm not claiming one or the other. But because the custodial wards are so overwhelmingly given to females, there's an absence of fathering. Now, in terms of who's in jail and punitively, the children that are getting in most in trouble are the ones that are not absent the mother, they're absent the father.
Right.
And that's the norm in the court's awards. Do you see anything changing? Is there something that's you're worried about concerning you have two teenagers?
Right, yeah. I mean, of course, I'm worried about it. I mean, it's well established. The things that happen, of course, is a big spectrum, but
Right.
for example, a young girl who was raised without her father, what do? They look for a father figure.
image, yeah.
They date older boys, older
They're
men.
also more promiscuous at earlier ages in life.
Because they're looking to get that. They're
Right.
looking to be loved and to get acceptance. The boys not having the role model of a father, who's traditionally a little bit more of a disciplinarian, they just get out of control. You're setting these children up as adults. You're setting them up for failure.
Sure, there's a continuance there.
When they say that, the cycle of abusive parents are abused, the child ends up getting into an abusive relationship. That's well established. Now we're saying we're removing one parent, and when I say the cycle continues, not only do they get divorced, Chris, what ends up happening in many cases is they end up alienating their child from their spouse.
Right, because that's what they've learned.
That's what they've learned,
learned.
that's acceptable.
We see the cultural differences changing on the fly here. I mean, in the last 20 or 30 years, it's really gotten a lot worse. And the custodial wards, to me, seem to be evidentiary. It should be something that everybody sees. And we don't know why people don't see that. It's obvious. The dysfunction's increasing. Schools are having more and more difficult time. The kids are acting out. There's less fathers.
Right.
It's a no-brainer.
It is.
One makes two.
Right.
I don't understand it. It's crazy.
I mean, to me, it's these judges and many attorneys that put money above the welfare of a child, and they get wrapped up in this system where it's all about money. When you're talking about kids' lives, I understand the equitable distribution. I might agree with it. I may not agree with it. I understand alimony. I understand child support to some extent. But what I don't understand is that it's acceptable to remove a child from a mother or a father.
The biology, the extended family, everything is missing. The learning, the differential in ideals when it comes to parenting is something that always strikes me, that there's always going to be a slight difference, but that's how the kid learns. The kid learns when there's a parent that's a little different than the other. Oh, I have something to gauge my life on. When there's only one parent, the gauge is lost.
Correct, right. Right, they're only hearing the one parent, and they're seeing that bad parent doing bad things because they've alienated against the other parent, and that becomes their only role model. And in many cases, such as mine, my kids not only lost their father, they lost a whole loving extended family. They lost all their cousins on my side. They lost a grandmother and a grandfather
Possible
that loved them.
babysitters, possible educators, people from another field of endeavor of their own learning can't pass that along anymore. So that whole side of their biology is wiped out.
Is gone. It's all, it's their whole family part of the tree is just chopped off.
And it's basically what it is.
But I think one of the things that we talked about, and I don't think we have to forget, is we always focus on the children, and of course that's the number one disappointment. But what's also important is the parent that loses their child. What a deep loss that is.
There's psychological help for you, young man. There's also money that you can put into some other system to get your peace and solitude.
Many people,
which people end up turning to alcohol and other things.
Everybody deals with this loss differently. The way I look at it, when I was in my 20s and I had my first son, and of course, just that act of seeing your child being born, your life changes forever at that moment, and you never felt love like that before. I remember
that clear as a bell, yeah.
And on that time, it just changes, and that's the focus of your whole life. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say you live for your child. I would give my life for my child. I work hard to make better for my child, and everything. My whole focus of my life is about my child.
And then suddenly you're on stage now, and that child that you no longer have access to sees you as a deprived individual, unable to handle them, and therefore there was some kind of reason to remove you, and that's a bad image to leave for that kid.
It's bad for the kid because they know that I was a loving father, up until the filing of the divorce. I was a loving father.
How did it suddenly make you a bad father?
All of a sudden, now I'm a bad father. I mean,
by virtue of what?
Right. by virtue of a divorce, now I've become a bad, evil person that they can't even talk to.
What I was describing about before a little bit was a comment that you mentioned to me, and I wrote it down. What is the right way to act when you lose your child? That bothers me because I thought about that 100 times over, not only from my own divorce, but I've seen people go through this all the time. They don't know how to react because it's not them that created the bureaucracy they're in. It's very unnatural.
When somebody loses a child, and like as you said, maybe they get into drugs, alcohol. From my experience, what I've seen, it's a grieving process at the beginning. But your child is being taken by someone who's supposed to love them. You go to the courts for help, and they throw you off. So now what do? Well, many people become depressed. And of course, when you become depressed, you say things that you shouldn't say. You act the way you normally wouldn't act, and then that's further puts you into a
oh my God! Look at how dysfunctional he really is now. I mean, you weren't dysfunctional before, but now because of all this, how are you supposed to be normal? This is what got me, because the extended conditions of all those people that are divorced fall into that category. There are many, many people who fall in at varying levels. Some get mildly dysfunctional, some don't give a shit, some remove themselves from the thought process.
Some get angry,
being parent, and some angry.
Fight back.
There's nothing. What is good out of that? You tell me what's good out of that.
There's can't think of it. You don't want to pay. You're angry about paying for your child.
Everything becomes a negative.
Everything is, and like in my instance, I went through depression. I went through anger at my ex-wife. I was angry at the judicial system. And I decided that my
perfectly normal and reasonable.
Of course. And then I decided that my focus in life, because now you need a focus. I no longer have my children to focus on. So I put a lot of work energy into my career. But you know what? It's great in the bank.
It's busy work.
It's not rewarding.
That's right.
It's not the same. So I've focused my life on exposing the corruption, the bias in the judicial system, in exposing parental alienation and getting it out to the public. And I got involved in politics, which is something I was never involved in before. But I realized that a lot of this is political, Chris.
Sure it is.
At the end of the day, it's money.
Sure it is.
Politics.
Well, I hope I'll vote for you, Gary, because I know you're going to speak from the bottom of the family's heart. That's for sure. I have to ask you a couple of questions about law guardians. I didn't have any of that situation in my own divorce, but from what I can see, there's a lack of a good reason to have another person who's a lawyer be responsible for the child's well-being or his best interest, as they say. That's the catch-all phrase.
Right. Well, I think they changed a few years ago the role of the law guardian, that it no longer looks for the child's best interest, which I agree, because a law guardian is a lawyer. They don't know what's in the best interest of a child. They're not a trained psychologist.
How many things can you ask of our lawyers, I always say? You want them to do this, you want them to be the moral compass, you want them to be the child's parent, absent of the regular parent. Nothing's going to work in that regard.
Now, the new guidelines for the law guardian are to vigorously fight for their client, the children, for what they want. So they would literally, this is not an exaggeration, ask a 5 or a 6-year-old child, who do you want to live with after the divorce?
Isn't that wonderful?
And if they say, I want to live with mommy, then they vigorously fight to have the father removed from the child's lives. And as I said, it's empowering.
Sole custody state.
It's empowering the other parent, because they know if they can get that child. So you know what do you do for a 6-year-old child? Before they go to meet with the law guardian, maybe mommy takes them to McDonald's and gets them a Happy Meal and an ice cream. At that moment, mommy's the best.
Did you know that you were just a source to keep the system going? Did you feel at any time that that's what was happening to you, even though that's a reality?
Because really, Chris, I looked and I said, I shouldn't be in court for 8 years. This is very simple. We agreed to shared parenting. We agreed on the money. We split the house. When I went into court and said...
If you were my client in mediation, that's exactly what you would have gotten. It would have been case closed. Now, of course, she got a hold of something. What did she get a hold of?
Right. So, of course, in my case, it's not always about the money when it comes to the divorcing. It's about proving one person wins over the other person. In my case, my ex-wife got plenty of money. She got all the money she wanted. She got more than her fair share of money. That wasn't enough. She wanted to remove the children from my life. Now, to me, that, in my opinion, you have to be a mentally ill person, that you hate your spouse more than you love your children.
Was she possible, from all the knowledge that you know of her existence prior, capable of that kind of thing, or was it accelerated by the lawyer that she had?
Well, in my opinion, somebody has to be predisposed to this. And as I look back, I realized that, in my opinion, my ex-wife fit the role of she was a sociopath. And she did this same thing to her first husband, where her first son from a previous marriage had no relationship with the father. So at the time, I didn't realize it. I never even heard of the word.
So in other words, she's a child collector.
It's. I guess that's what it is. But and I think it's the most important thing that I'm going to say it again, is that she has to love her children more than she hates me.
Exactly.
That's the only way it's good.
Well, that's a good way to put it.
That's the only way that this would be resolved, and as long as she's out to punish me. But again, if the courts didn't allow it to happen, it would stop, because you know what? She may be a sociopath, and in my opinion, she's crazy. She doesn't want to go to jail.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to spend money.
She's not going to be subject to any punishment.
Right. So she may not like it, but if the judge said, hey, you have to honor this agreement, or you're going to lose custody, you're going to go to jail, you're going to pay a fine, whatever, some punishment.
Yeah.
But they learn very fast that nothing's going to happen.
What do you think happens to the child looking at that mother now with all that power and winning that, whatever it is she thinks she has to win, not winning really, but winning, and what happens to that child's eyes now looking at that parent in that state? I mean, that's got to be some...
It's got to be. I can't imagine the torment that the children have to go through.
Ladies and gentlemen, you got to know, this is not only fairly normal, because it is fairly normal to see out there. It's common. I mean, we hate to say this, but it's true. And if you don't think that this doesn't happen, I mean, look at the society around you to use as your value point. Would you just say that a great deal of what we're looking at out there with the people that we see every day that are having so much trouble getting into their own family or being part of their family, that divorce and these forced legal issues that come upon us are suddenly disrupting and disorienting everybody. Nobody has the normal foot used to take going forward is not there for you anymore.
I think about people watching the show, and I said, half the people in the country get divorced, but there's many people who are happily married and aren't divorced, and they're probably looking at this show. Hopefully, they're still watching, and they're saying, "Well, this doesn't affect me. I don't care about it."
That is what happened for many, many years, but people are starting to turn now.
What I tell people is, you may not care if you have 2 children. The odds are one of them is going to get divorced.
Yeah.
And you don't want your child going. Nobody should want their child going through this.
Yeah.
And you have to remember, they may lose their grandchildren over it.
It's exactly what I was just going to say. Do you realize how many grandparents are not allowed to see their grandchildren? Think about that legacy. Okay, not only are you going to miss the child's life as a parent, then you're going to go forward another 20, 30 years and never see that child again. That's a total disruption. That's that extended family we talked about before. The family unit is busting. That's how I read my closing at the end. The family has been broken up. It's a cornerstone of our American condition.
One of the things I think of is that a lot of people will say that, when your children get in their 30s, they'll realize what they did that was wrong, and they'll come around.
And if I die before they get there?
I was going to, Chris, can you imagine if I die before my children get that opportunity, and then in
Sure.
their 30s they realize it, and the rest of their life they have to
that wondering.
live with the fact that I never got to make it right with my father,
Exactly.
my parents, their grandparents, they're
And
getting
I am
older.
hearing some of this now, that they didn't have a chance to do that, to
They don't have a chance.
revisit.
Right. I mean, everyone says when they get older, you know what? There may not be that opportunity. And how does that child go through the rest of their life knowing that they never got to make this right?
Let's talk a little bit, real quick, and this is going quick, about the law-abiding parents becoming criminals. How does the child respond to that? That's collateral damage, something most people don't think about.
I mean, as we always say, when we see the role models, and if a parent is in jail, ends up is a criminal and is in jail, the chances are pretty good that the child's going to do that. In a case of divorce, you have
You said that very lightly. I hope the audience is listening, because it's a
Right.
reality.
I mean,
yeah.
it's a reality. So it's the cycle continuing. And in a divorce case, or a case like mine, where other than a speeding ticket in college, I never had any issues with the law. All of a sudden now, I'm arrested with false accusations. My kids see that, but now you have to remember, now that's what they saw as their role model. Now it's not my children. It's not uncommon for them to be exposed to police, to sheriffs, to courts coming in. That shouldn't. No children should have to ever experience that.
No, there's a pompous attitude about our parenting too, and it's a cultural thing. We've acquired this information over time, but we think that we'll take care of that. That's not going to happen to my kid. I'm the parent. I'll take care of that. You know what? You're all full of it.
It can happen.
They're all full of it. It can happen to you, and you can't control it once it happens, right?
Nope. I mean,
what control did you have?
Right. It's they're creating a monster. They say you make your bed, now you'll have to lie in it, and it's easy for a parent, I think, to lose focus when they're in the midst of a divorce.
Very easy. Yeah.
But then you look back and you say, what kind of monster have I created? Now there are parents who actually do love their children enough to realize, my gosh, what did I do to my child? And they try to make it right. Then there are other parents who perpetuate it.
What some parents won't do, I'm only talking about the bad parents, they'll look at that opportunity of saying, well, maybe I did something wrong. Maybe there's some way I can reconnect the kids with the other parent. They won't do that because their anger is too serious because of the pain they went through. Right. Whatever pain they went through, they decide, well, I'll take care of them somehow. They have this pompous attitude, which is what I was referring to before, that I'll take care of it, it's okay.
And I think the more pain involved, the more fighting, and the easier it is to lose sight of what's most important, which is your children. And that's why I tell people, I beg people, please don't go to the courts.
Yeah.
Because that's what's going to create this anger and this fighting. If you go to a mediator, listen, it's not going to be a pleasant,
mediators are used to having the first session or two go pretty wild sometimes.
Right.
It's all right, that's the way it is.
And then you get the mediator knows, look, I work for both of you. I want to get the focus on the end game, which is coming out unscathed, your child and both of you, so you can go on with your life.
Something you'll never see in court, I put the picture of the kids at the table so that the clients have to see the picture of the children before they see me.
Right.
And before sometimes they view me as a judge, unfortunately, which is not what a mediator is. Neutral third party, we stay out of that conclusory position. But we also can join in on a family's exaltation of how things can be looked forward with their child, and that's what I do. If I do anything at all, is I lead them towards the goodness and the quality of what their life would be like going forward, keeping that in mind.
Keeping them focused. That's
Keeping
important when you're in court.
Not
only is there not a picture of your child, the child's not there. That's the furthest thing from your mind.
Yeah, and on the way to get to court, you see the jail cell.
I mean, that's the last thing you're thinking of when you're going to court.
Let's real quick. People get in trouble early on. People should know that there's reasons. There's a magic bullet, the ex parte order or the false allegations issue. Talk quickly about that.
They refer to the magic bullet when one parent feels like they may be losing whatever losing is, the custody, the money. They do what's called the magic bullet, which is you run into family court, you claim abuse
or domestic violence.
You get an order of protection ex parte with the other party being there. At the end of the day, it'll never matter if that gets thrown out, but it's held against the person. And the old saying, where there's smoke, there's fire.
Right.
So you make it 2 or 3 of these, and the judge says, you know what?
That's enough.
Well, maybe the person really is bad. In my case, I got an order for posting on a website the facts in my case. Nobody disputed that they were the facts, but yet my ex-wife was able to go to...
You can talk about the show. My show was actually used in it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I actually took one of your shows and referenced how it related to my ex-wife, which it did, and I was served an order of protection for that, and it ended up costing me thousands of dollars to defend it in court. At the end of the day, it was thrown out because there was no case, but my wife walks away, with ex-wife, walks away. The courts don't prosecute.
Yeah.
They should prosecute. So you know what you did was wrong. You violated his rights for 7 months, cost him thousands of dollars, but the courts don't. In fact, I think the courts liked it.
No.
The lawyers certainly liked it.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. Well, there's some advantage there. There's a real quick, I like the term counterintuitive. The legal process is counterintuitive as it relates to being forced to pay for things the child wants.
Right.
Real quick.
In my instance, I'm forced to pay for a percentage of my children's college, which I would love to do. I mean, who doesn't want to pay for their kids' college if you can do it? But I think that there has to be a give and take relationship with the child. It shouldn't be, well, even if they don't have a relationship with me, you know what? They can still pick whatever college they want to go.
Right,
Dad's still
right.
going to pay for their college. It's not, what does it tell the child?
For a while they were trying to force that out of. Did they force that?
I am forced, actually. My children don't talk to me, and my argument is that wasn't my agreement. I'm in charge of college, but it's part of me seeing the children. What they do is they call it selective enforcement, and they only enforce parts of the agreement. They're very good at enforcing the college and the money, but when it comes to enforcing the parenting schedule, that's not so important. To me, that would be the most important thing, is up here, my children's well-being and seeing both parents and having a relationship. Somewhere way down here should be the money.
Right.
But in the court system,
it
it's flip-flop.
It only has that access. It's a civil court, and civil courts are always about money. Real quick, last comments. What would you do to give the audience advice on how to go forward? What's going to happen to them? How can they save their children? Is it possible?
Right.
Difficult chore, I know, but go ahead.
Right. I mean, well, first of all, I say, think about getting a divorce. In my time, when I was growing up, parents stayed together for the best interest of their children. Now we've become so selfish. We say, well, if I'm not happy, I'm going to leave. There's something to be said for staying together for maybe another 4 or 5 years for your children. I wish I would have done it. Looking back, what this has done to my children and how it's so destroyed them, I wish I could do it all over again, and I would stay until my children were over. But listen, it takes 2 to tango.
If you get that far, if you get further, then you might suggest maybe mediation or something like that.
I would say it takes 2 to tango. At that point, I absolutely suggest mediation. You must go, at least try mediation. Yeah. And if anybody's listening to this, if you love your children, you will go to mediation, stay out of the courts.
Rather than go to court, no doubt about it.
Please go to mediation.
Gary Jacobs, thank you very much. It was a heartfelt story. Societal and political trends are rapidly breaking down the family that once was the cornerstone of our great American culture. At FIT, we know you cannot get this information on your own, so we'll bring it to your TV every single week. Of course, we always invite all opposing views. My name is Chris Dimaggio. Thank you for watching FIT TV, and we'll see you again next week.